Hey everyone, Dr. Kenneth J here. I'm here poolside in Las Vegas. It's UFC fight night, and I'm helping Danish fighter Nicholas Dalby in the corner for his fight later today. But that's actually not the primary thing I want to talk about in this video. The thing is, I want to give you some background information on why rowing, why you should row. And while explaining that, I'll also come into the reasons behind creating the RowForge app, which I'm a co-creator of. Okay, so I've worked in strength and conditioning for many, many years. I've been a coach to Olympic level athletes, Olympic medalists, world champions in a variety of sports, basically from swimming to wrestling, and several other sports in between. And one thing that's over the years come to my attention, not so much working with the elite athletes, but also working with general population and just being a big part of the strength and conditioning community, is that seems to be a lack of emphasis on cardiovascular development. Though many of you may know me from the years I spent within the RKC with kettlebell training, which I'm a big proponent of. But what I realized over the years, and as I studied exercise physiology and obtained my PhD, is that in physical development, especially in sports that require strength and power and explosiveness, there seems to be a lack of emphasis on cardiovascular development. And that basically led me to writing my book, The Cardio Code, which was meant as basically a response to the idea that you can train your cardio as long as you get your heart rate up, which is not true at all. From a physiological standpoint, your heart rate will increase under many different circumstances. For instance, if you get scared, your heart rate will jump up. If you do like static or isometric stuff, your heart rate will go up, but that does not mean that it's going to have a positive effect on your cardiovascular system. You actually need to train your cardiovascular system. In order to train it specifically, you have to stimulate an increase in what's called maximum oxygen uptake. And this is not intended to be like a exercise physiology lecture here, but overall you have 4 chambers of your heart, and the chamber that's called the left ventricle is basically the determining factor of how much blood and thereby how much oxygen can be pumped into your system every minute. And cardiovascular exercise is basically is meant to increase the capacity of the left ventricle. So during exercise it will expand, so it can hold more blood, and every time it then contracts, it ejects blood into your system, and that blood is oxygenated, and that's going to deliver the oxygen to the working muscles. If your cardiovascular exercise does not stimulate an increase in maximum oxygen uptake, it's going to be difficult to defend a position that what you're doing is termed cardiovascular exercise or cardio. So that's one of the key elements that has to be in there. And only about 4 different exercises does that to a significant extent. So you got gait or running, if you will, locomotion we can call it. We got cycling, we got cross-country skiing, and then we got rowing. There are only a few other devices out there that actually increases oxygen uptake, or an increase in that left ventricular expansion as well. And that's, if some of you are familiar with what's called the VersaClimber. VersaClimber or similar was used in, if you guys remember, the training montage from Rocky IV, where Dolph Lundgren is kind of on a vertical climbing machine, moving his arms and legs up and down opposite. that's actually also been shown to be quite a significant stimulus on par with running and rowing to the cardiovascular system. But if you're not doing any of those, it's actually not really cardiovascular exercise. You can't do it with high rep thrusters. You can't do cardio with a lot of burpees or a lot of tabatas of squats and deadlifts and pull-ups or whatever else that's out there that's being advertised as being your cardiovascular stuff. There is a cardiovascular contribution of doing circuit-style training, but it will never be on the level that running, rowing, biking, cross-country skiing, or being on the VersaClimber will be able to. So I can only say, if you want to learn more about that, you can read my book, The Cardio Code, which is on iBooks. And if you can't find it there, shoot me an email and I'll be happy, or a message either on this YouTube channel or find me on social media, and I'll provide you with a link where you can download it. What we're actually going to talk about here is that then why, between all of those different cardiovascular exercises, then why rowing in particular? Well, there's a difference between the, let's call it the 4 basic cardiovascular activities. So cycling and running, they're very much similar. It's leg driven, and the turnover rate for each stride or each RPM, each time you thread on the pedals on the bike, you have very high repetitions per minute. Which means that for each repetition, you don't have to develop a lot of power, as opposed to, for instance, rowing. When you're rowing, you will probably average somewhere between mid-20s to mid-30s strokes per minute, as compared to being on a bicycle, where it's not uncommon to see 120 revolutions per minute. And running, it's not uncommon to see like a stride frequency of 160 or even more per minute. So that means that the lower movements per minute, if you will, you have to apply more power, generate more power in each movement in order to obtain a high average power output. And the high average power output is interesting because that's the one that's correlated with your oxygen uptake. And that actually means for rowing, we not only have a high contribution of about 80% or so of the skeletal muscle total skeletal muscle mass, but we also have significant contributions from both the lower extremities and the upper extremities. So it's quads, it's hamstrings, it's the glute muscles, it's the lower back, it's the upper back, and it's the arms as well. And even EMG studies actually also show there's a significant amount of contribution from your pectorals and your delts as well. That has to do with the going into the recovery phase on the stroke. So that actually means that we are using a lot of muscle mass, and we're developing a lot of power for each stroke in order to obtain the highest possible average power for whatever amount of time that you're exercising. And in order to obtain a high amount of power, you need to use more force, because power is force multiplied by the movement velocity. And if you use more force, that means the muscles have to, if you're going for higher power outputs, one of the elements that you can emphasize is generating a lot of force and moving fast. Those are the two. But if you're using a lot of force and generating a lot of force, the muscles have to contract. They have to contract harder and more forcefully in order to generate it. And that means that there's an anaerobic stimulus to the movement as well. So in a typical rowing scenario, usually you use a 2,000 meter row to gauge your cardiovascular capacity. That contribution from anaerobic sources is about 20, maybe 25, or depending on the athlete, probably up to 30%, and the rest of it is coming from aerobic energy turnover. So you're looking at a 70-30, maybe 80-20, somewhere in between in distribution. And that is quite different from cycling, cross-country skiing, and running. And you will see that in the stature of a rower. Even a lightweight rower will have more pronounced muscle mass than an equivalent runner or cyclist will have. So there's a muscle building component in there as well, and you're training your anaerobic energy turnover capacity as well. And that's why I like rowing so much, because it's probably the most complete. It's probably the most complete activity, cardiovascular activity that you can do. And it's very easy if you learn how to basically set up or design your rowing training so you can emphasize either the anaerobic energy turnover or the aerobic turnover. It's a bit more complicated, there's a bit more to it, but that's actually why we have such an elaborate testing protocol built into the RowForge app. It's called the Viking Power Profile, and it will actually tell you, based on a 2,000 meter test, exactly what power or what wattage you have to hit on average on different distances in order to create the maximum stimulus to your cardiovascular system and to your anaerobic and aerobic energy turnover. So it's very much science-based. It's very much based and founded in exercise physiology, everything that you'll see in the RowForge app. And I actually like rowing so much that being a part of the RowForge team and helping create and contribute with the programming and the testing protocols and all of that is tremendously important to me, because it means that a lot more people can experience the benefit of rowing. Technically, rowing is not that difficult. It has a few elements, and we'll come back to that in later videos. But overall, it's a very simple movement, and if you learn how, and you learn the timing, you learn the sequence, and you learn the breathing mechanics around it, there is so much to be gained. I've had clients who've actually gained muscle mass doing the muscle building protocols, the anaerobic protocols, as well as improving their maximal oxygen uptake with this. There's a bunch of different training programs embedded already in the RowForge app. There's conditioning programs, there are high intensity interval trainings, the Power 10s as I like to call them, and then we of course have all the signature workouts in there that are named. That are basically named from Norse mythology and the like. I think that's it for now. This video turned out quite a bit longer than I expected, but that's okay. I hope you'll check out the RowForge app, and I hope you'll subscribe to the RowForge YouTube channel. Just press the thing, whatever, on the YouTube page. If you have any comments, drop them below. I'll be happy to answer it. And just remember, there's going to be a lot more videos coming your way, coming to this channel. Right now, it pretty much looks like I'm in paradise, but soon I'll be back with a rowing machine as well from Concept 2 to take you through some technical aspects of rowing, and I'll also do a few videos showing you how to navigate the RowForge app. All right, I think that's it. Happy rowing, everyone.